What's up, duelists? I'm Ashton or SmashtonYGO, and we need to answer a really simple question. Is Yu-Gi-Oh fun? Now, this may seem like a dumb question to ask because, of course, Yu-Gi-Oh's fun. If it wasn't, then it probably wouldn't exist as a card game, it wouldn't be as popular as it is, and people wouldn't play it. But I do think that there is some merit to the discussion. Mostly, I'm talking about the sort of types of fun that you can find in card games. I saw an interesting post on Twitter about the idea that some players who play casually kind of tout that as like something to be proud of, and as almost as if they're a little bit more superior because they don't go really hard into competitive and are better players or like having more fun because they're playing casually and not competitive. And then trying to dispel this idea that competitive means that you're not having fun. And I thought that that might have been an interesting discussion point to talk about. I think it can really go both ways as well. I think people who are really high into the competitive Yu-Gi-Oh space can also be kind of elitist as well. And because, you know, high competitive Yu-Gi-Oh requires so much skill and planning and playtesting and time, you can sort of feel an investment whenever you are going to these events, paying for these events, trying to top the events, trying to do testing and really testing out a format, labbing out a deck. And so I guess you could definitely sort of start to feel a little personal about how that makes you. But then I also do see the point of like the idea that, oh, I'm having more fun than you because I just don't care and I'm going to play it how I want to play it. And that kind of becoming sort of a dividing line between the two sides. What I really want to talk about in this video, though, is those two sides and the people in between and how we all are having fun in Yu-Gi-Oh in different ways, but also in the flawed way that Yu-Gi-Oh is set up to where not every side really can flourish like it should. Let's start from the very top, competitive. I think this is where Yu-Gi-Oh is its strongest. It is what Yu-Gi-Oh is catered towards. There is only one meta in Yu-Gi-Oh, the current competitive meta. The ban list dictates it, the cards that come out in product are dictated by it, and that is that. You go to regionals, you go to events, the main event is the current metagame. There is no separate formats where you can get like a nationals or a YCS trophy. It's not going to happen. It is only in the current format. And so Yu-Gi-Oh really is, it feels like, built and planned around that one format that we have right now, because I think that's where Yu-Gi-Oh is really at its strongest. When you have two really high level players duking it out with meta decks, whether they be the same in a mirror match or be different, seeing the back and forth and seeing who comes out on top using skill, using planning, using their intelligence is something else to see. And it takes a lot of work to get there. And just because it can seem frustrating, just because it can seem rough on the outside looking into that competitive sphere, doesn't necessarily mean it's not fun to those players. When that person who wins holds up that trophy, or that person who finally gets a top at a YCS or even a regional that they've been working towards for so long, it feels amazing. And that's sort of the rush that you're looking for when you play competitive, is that feeling of, I just worked to accomplish something. I had a goal, I set it, I worked for it, and I got there, and I did it, I won, I achieved it, and I proved to myself that I can do it. And I feel that personally. Like, I think I also do have that competitive spirit to where when I won locals for the first time, and it took me a while because, no offense, but I'm not the best person at Yu-Gi-Oh, but I try my best, and I felt great. It was exhilarating, and now I'm still trying to work towards a regional top and then on from there, because I do enjoy that competitive aspect. It's a challenge. It's a mountain to climb. It's a wall to get through. It is a barrier to break down, and I enjoy the challenge of trying to do that. But then there is this group sort of in the middle of competitive and casual, and that is the rogue player. And by and large, I find myself personally being more of a rogue player, and that's for a couple different reasons. For me, it is a different kind of challenge. When you play meta, people know what you're playing, people know exactly how to counter it, people know what the cards you're using are doing. And to a certain extent, I prefer that, because I don't really love when I go play against somebody and I have no idea what they're doing, because then if I lose, oftentimes it feels like I lose because of lack of information. Then that comes into the question of, why is everything in Yu-Gi-Oh legal? Because that means you kind of have to be prepared for everything, because you can get blindsided sometimes. But that's a whole nother discussion in and of itself. But I'm talking about our decks that I like to play the most, which tend to not be the top meta, but tend to be just below in that rung there where they're really competitive with the top meta, but just not quite at that #1 level. I have 2 decks in my deck box right now, one of which being Sword Soul, which is the deck that I won locals with for the first time, and then the other one being my favorite deck, Salamangreat. Both are considered powerful strategies in their own right, but are also rogue decks in a certain sense. Both have also been competitive at one point or another, but also are rogue right now because of things like Unchained, things like Pearly, things like Rescue Ace wreaking havoc. What I like most about rogue is that there's just more variety. If the top meta decks are Pearly and Rescue Ace and I just don't really vibe with either their gameplay or their aesthetics or both, then rogue gives me an opportunity to play a deck that I actually do really enjoy without having to worry about, is it actually going to be the best deck that you can use? Some people don't care about that. I personally do. If I'm going to play a deck, it has to be something that I personally vibe with and that I really enjoy. It's not just going to be what I think is the best thing at the time. And so that's why I consider myself more of a rogue player. But again, I think rogue is also sort of in that competitive sphere. It's not exactly top meta where you're only playing meta decks all the time and you're sort of rotating through decks all the time as they come in and out of the meta, buying new meta cards, every set or whatnot. But it is something to where I am buying them, I'm playing them, I'm trying to get really good with them with the idea of being able to go up against those decks and beat them, either because I just really enjoy the deck and they can compete, or because I have played with my one deck for so long and it's still been viable for so long that I can make plays that maybe somebody who hasn't played with the deck as much won't see. And again, I think that's another strength of rogue, is the fact that the decks, while they will fluctuate in power, don't go away forever. I mean, Salad kind of went away, but it was kind of around. You could play it. There was just better cyber decks out there. But now that it's got new support, Sword Soul has been out for a while along with Branded, and it is still, really solid of a deck. So they kind of stick around for longer than top meta, at least in terms of how they are in their tiers. Like once they hit rogue, they kind of stay at rogue for a while. And I really enjoyed that because it means you can play them for longer. But then you have the other tier, which is the casual tier. And I'm saying tiers as in like the sort of echelon of how competitive things are, not in terms of what's better. I'm not saying because competitive was up here that it's like better, you're better a Yu-Gi-Oh player or a better person by playing competitive. Just kind of how I was structured. But anyway, casual, huge challenge. If you're going to walk into a locals and you don't know who's there or what to expect, you're probably not going to have a good time unless you get really lucky, because from my experience, most locals are fairly competitive aside from the specific ones that you can hang out at. I can't speak from everybody's locals, but I've went to a couple now around my state and throughout the region, and I find them fairly competitive. And so trying to take sort of a casual deck or something that maybe you really like but isn't very good to those level of events, it's not really going to work out, and you're probably not going to have a great time, because even though you may love your deck, I mean, let's be honest, it's not fun getting curb stomped. And sure, maybe you can snag a win here and there, and that's perfectly fine, and I'm proud of you for doing so, but that's not going to be the typical outcome, and you know that. But where casual, I think, is really at its strongest is in everything else. Not trying to take casual decks to a locals and try to be competitive, but just keeping casual in its own sphere. Again, I think Magic the Gathering really does this the best with things like Commander format and Draft format, where they're very casual. You can, as long as you have a good friend base or player base, then you can have a really fun time and not worry about just what's the best strategies here and there. And I think Yu-Gi-Oh is really lacking that. I mean, again, there is just the one format. Sure, there are other formats you can play here and there, especially when you go to like side events at regionals or YCSs. Or some locals do like different sort of formats like GOAT or Edison or Deckmaster, but Konami doesn't do a good job of supporting those, and I really think that that's a mistake. Casual Yu-Gi-Oh is a no man's land of amazing, incredible ideas just waiting to be picked up and reformatted so that Konami can make money. I mean, look at Magic. It makes so much money off of making Commander-only product that is made specifically for Commander, like Commander decks and so on and so forth. Yu-Gi-Oh could do the same thing. I know they do Speed Duel, but I think the problem with Speed Duel is just that it's not core Yu-Gi-Oh. Like, it reduces the zones and it has the skill cards, which fundamentally changes the game. Same with Rush Duel is a fundamentally different game. People want to play Yu-Gi-Oh! they just don't want to play Yu-Gi-Oh as it is in the modern metagame right now. That's why things like my Master Duel in our series are so fun to record, because it's different and it's awesome to play and it's fun. And even though I lose a lot because I'm playing a crazy, stupid NR only deck against really high level strategies, it's fun to just mess around with Yu-Gi-Oh, because Yu-Gi-Oh is such a weird card game where you can use anything and things can synergize in weird ways that it's fun to just smash stuff together and see what happens. But that's the problem, is I have to make that fun. I have to create that idea. I have to make that work. I have to put those restrictions on myself to be able to have that fun. And if you're a casual player and you want to do stuff like that in like its own format, why is there not an NR only ladder like on Master Duel? I'm not saying that that would be the most popular format, but in my personal opinion, when the festival was going on early on in Master Duel, it was the best one we've ever had still to this day. And it's been like a year or so since then. So I'm just saying, like, there should be more formats, more options for players so that casual players can actually sort of keep growing, if anything, right? Anyway, this kind of turned into like a little bit of a rant about just like me wanting Yu-Gi-Oh to improve on helping the casual audience, while also having a bit of a discussion about competitive versus rogue players. It was kind of a mess of ideas, but either way, I hope you enjoyed it. I think at the end of the day, there's plenty of fun to be had in Yu-Gi-Oh! It just depends on what you personally enjoy. And sometimes if you're especially in casual and you want to play something a little wacky and fun, you kind of got to make more work or find your own fun, which can be a bit annoying, but it is there. And I do think it's worth it when you can finally get some weird formats going with maybe your friends or a locals group. I think it's really a fun time. But if you're a competitive player or you go to locals every week, or you're a rogue player, whatever you may be, I think that's perfectly fun too. I mean, I do it every week. I go to locals, I play competitive Yu-Gi-Oh, but then I come in here and I sit down, I play Master Duel in our format and get my butt kicked because I'm just normal summoning a normal monster and hoping for the best against top meta strategies, but I'm still having fun both ways. So I don't have a dog in the fight of casual versus competitive Yu-Gi-Oh. I kind of enjoy both, and I think that it's great that Yu-Gi-Oh can allow you to enjoy both. I just hope that one day Konami makes it more accessible. What do you think about Yu-Gi-Oh and Fun? Do you play competitive? Do you play rogue? Do you play casual? Comment below and let me know. And make sure to check out the rest of my channel if you want more awesome, cool Yu-Gi-Oh content and want to see that Master Duel in our format or any of the other awesome videos I have surrounding the card game. Make sure to subscribe so you see those. Comment down below, like the video, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.